Awesome. Hey, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me all right? Awesome. Well, welcome. It's really a gift to have you here this morning. My name is Lisa Smith. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the executive director of the Washington State Microenterprise Association. And I want you to know how exciting this is for me because, uh, it's humbling working with small micro businesses when you're a part of this large Pinwar community. But we may be many, the small businesses may be many, but they're mighty. And I want to begin, first of all, just by saying thank you to our Pinwar hosts. We're super excited to be here. What an incredible organization. And we have an honoree here on our panel, which is really exciting. I also want to say thank you to Alberta. How welcoming Alberta has been to me, just in traveling around and these incredible speakers. I want to say thank you to the Indigenous peoples who have been stewarding this land for time immemorial and their people and are strong in this nation. I also want to say thank you to the incredible entrepreneurs that I had a privilege of working with for 25 years. They have made me very pure from, how you burn the dross off metal? They've taught me so much about the power of microenterprise and how imperative it is to support them and understand their value and ensure they're integrated into the economy. So without further ado, I'd like to take a moment to just, I'm going to grab thank you. Perfect. I'd like to just begin with my slide deck really quickly to set the foundation. So I'm in Washington State, and we are really fortunate. Our governor is supportive of microenterprise development. We have, of the 748,000 companies in Washington, 600,000 plus are microenterprises. These are companies with 5 or fewer employees, 88%. So when you think about the power of these companies, you can see. So next slide. And maybe I can advance in here. So the panelists are going to be presenting in just a bit. We're going to go through all of them, and they're going to present and talk about their programming. But I want to begin just by saying the work that we do is critical to not only the ecosystem of nonprofit, public, and academic partners that help businesses, but also the government. It's an incredibly difficult opportunity to serve businesses. One aspect of our work, our association has been around for 20 years. We provide training for the nonprofits so that they can provide the best possible technical assistance to businesses on the ground. How to work with entrepreneurs with disabilities, how to serve small-scale manufacturers, how to ensure these businesses have access to health care. What about financing? So we provided many trainings last year and every year. The next part of our work is really around grant making. Last year, fiscal year 2024-2025, we funded $2 million to 46 nonprofits. Those nonprofits reach 5,700 businesses with training, technical assistance, and financing. These entrepreneurs, once they got technical assistance and financing, were able to get 2.7 million in very small loans and grants. We know that that's almost impossible if you have no credit, if you have no education, if you hardly have any access to opportunity, but that's a huge gain. We also launched a couple of years ago Evergreen BizLink. It's a platform where we have vetted 137 public, academic, and nonprofit partners who are easily found by any entrepreneur anywhere in the state with a navigator. And so this is 24/7. They can search by industry sector, their stage of their life cycle, their language, region, and it's been a tremendous opportunity for entrepreneurs in the state. This is our former governor, had a welcoming on there. We're patiently waiting for our new governor to do the welcome. These are the partners that have helped us get started on Evergreen BizLink, but they reach federal with the Small Business Administration, our WIDA organization, Suzanne Dale Esty with the Washington Economic Development Association, incredible partners, Main Street, Department of Commerce, SBDCs. They were the foundational partners to get Evergreen BizLink off the ground. And so that's a part of our presentation that I wanted to share. So think for a moment about a forest. You have these giant cedars, like we have heard in this session, in agriculture, in oil, in transportation. We have to have them. They're the ones who are carrying so much. But the understory of the forest, the mycelium, the trees, the bushes, they all are a part of that network, and it make those tall, huge cedars strong. And that's where we are going to be concentrating today. So I'd like to begin just by telling you two stories. One quick story is an entrepreneur in the far reaches of the peninsula in Washington State. His name is Jesse Fossey. And he has a stump grinding company. He is from a very low income community. He is a problem solver. He collects waste grease from restaurants. He processes it into fuel, and he fueled his stump grinding business. He lost his leg in an accident, found the Division of Oak Rehab to help people with disabilities. He then got training and technical assistance. Through that support, he got a small loan for $9,000 for a stump grinder. Instead of 20-mile radius, he now has a 150-mile radius. With that added revenue, he paid back that loan in 6 months. He is now a leader in this community. The other story is Ines Cook. She owns a little company called Salmon and Bannock. Have any of you ever eaten that restaurant in Vancouver, BC? Okay, if you don't, you must go, because she buys from harvesters, from hunters, and incredible number of small businesses to provide this delicious food in her restaurant. She now has a company in the airport. These two businesses are just examples of how oriented small businesses are to support other businesses and helping them grow. And without the support, neither of these two companies could have grown as big as they are. So I want to stop now and just say that's the foundation, and I want to hand it over to Laurie. I met Laurie Trautman at a cross-border gathering last fall in Sydney. It was a room of Canadians and Washingtonians in the middle of a very difficult time. Not a lot of people were talking. And after that day of connection and collaboration, we were hugging each other at the end. And what we learned is that cross-border tensions are real. Companies are suffering. There's challenges on our side of the border with just getting their claims back from the illegal tariffs. And the issues that these companies have been facing on both sides are real. And so I was just really impressed with Laurie, and how you have understood these issues, and I'd love to have you share a little bit more.
Thanks, Lisa. Hi, everybody. I'm a little bit of a square peg here in this session because I don't work with small businesses, but I run a research institute whose goal is to provide more information for policymakers to basically minimize the friction of the border. So a lot of what we have been doing over the last year and a half is trying to understand the impacts of these broader tensions in our local community, both kind of in a cross-border region, but also on the Washington state side, because in my community, we're incredibly dependent on our Canadian visitors and our Canadian connections, transportation, and whatnot. So a lot of small businesses have really been feeling the impacts, and Lisa asked me to come today and just give you a little bit of a snapshot into what that looks like as part of the bigger story of the impacts that small businesses are facing. So I have a few slides just to kind of paint a little bit of a portrait. I'll just take about 5 minutes or so. So a little bit about the context that we are in, changes in cross-border travel. This is how the U.S. entries from Canada changed in 2025 compared to 2024. As you may recall, when COVID basically shut down the border to non-essential travel, we had very, very low cross-border volumes, but they had been steadily increasing basically year over year, month over month since those restrictions were lifted until January of 2025. And so overall, we saw a drop of around 20% across the entire Canada-US border, but this played out very differently in different regions. So I'll highlight Detroit, you can see, saw a drop of 11%, whereas Cascadia, where we are, saw a drop of 26%. And that's because our border is connected in a very different way. So in Detroit-Windsor corridor, many people are crossing for work. They continue to cross regardless of the geopolitical tensions. But in Cascadia, they're crossing for discretionary purposes largely. So shopping, tourism. We have a lot of Canadians who used to come and fill up on gas because gas was so much cheaper. So those are trips that are really easy to pivot away from, but they're also trips that provide a lot of spending in our community, and particularly, again, for smaller businesses. So we also saw, I know we're in Edmonton, we're really far from the land border, but this also happened in the air mode, of course, as well, but to a much lesser degree. So a drop of around 12% of Canadians returning from the US, and actually a little bit of growth of US visitation to Canada. So this is 2025. So far in 2026, it seems to be stabilizing, maybe even a little bit of trend reversal, but it feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We start to maybe decide we're going to get past this, and then the U.S. administration throws out something else that really pisses everybody off, and we're back to where we started from. So we've done a survey with businesses in our community. Again, this is just where we live, but I have this feeling it might be pretty representative of other border communities as well. We just interviewed 62 businesses. 50 of them were sort of micro to small, and we asked them questions about how they are experiencing this decline in Canadian visitation. So this question, have businesses made changes in response to this? We actually did this survey last year and we did it again this year. And we saw around, it's pretty split. 37% have made changes, 37% haven't. But what's interesting is many of these businesses that have made changes are making them for the long term. 61% say they are laying off employees, they are changing their marketing strategies, or they're changing their offerings completely. So these might be short-term trends, but they're certainly having long-term impacts, especially for our small businesses. There's a lot on this slide, but what I want to point out is that the majority of businesses were actually not just changing their strategies, but concerned about their survival. So we saw a lot of respondents who were open for less than 10 years, really worried about their survival. And again, many people kind of changing their business models altogether. And I have a couple quotes there, which I actually read in the tourism session yesterday, but I think they're very reflective. We've had to strategically change our outreach model to include mostly domestic and no Canadian or international travel. This I actually think is maybe a boon to the Canadian communities north of the border because they are pulling on their domestic market more than what sort of the loss used to be to the border. But again, these are long-term strategies that these businesses are having to adapt to in a very unpredictable environment. And we're also seeing the overwhelming response we got from Microenterprises was there are many things that are negatively affecting my business: supply chain, changing requirements, local hardships. But the Canadian tourism decrease has been one of the most quantifiable and impactful. And I think this is probably my last slide. I thought I would just throw out there a little bit of a happy story amid all the doom and gloom, that our region has still really come together with our small businesses in the lead up to FIFA. So we have a policy brief on our website that talks about what that looked like, but it was essentially the host committees in Seattle and Vancouver and many of the small businesses in the county where I live adjacent to the border who were getting together every other week and talking about what are we expecting, how many people are we expecting. The border was, of course, a pretty significant part in that. We developed a tool called Know Before You Go that can help small businesses if they are trying to enable travelers to know what they need before they cross the border. But one thing I wanted to point out, we have a business in our community called Bel Air Shuttles, and it's basically a transportation service. And they were able to get funding through our state tourism agency for FIFA and develop a new route that specifically brought travelers across the border to the FIFA World Cup games. But this wouldn't have been possible without this cross-border collaboration because it involved the participation of the US and Canadian border agencies. So some problem solving. I think a lot of problem solving is still happening, but I recognize that for small businesses, this is really, really challenging because it's this sort of new and really uncharted territory that they're having to wade through amid all of this other uncertainty. So just a little bit of a side of snapshot of the border environment and how that may be, layering on these additional challenges. And I think even if you're not directly on the border, these things can affect you in many different ways, again, as these markets kind of change and reorient. So for me.
Thank you, Laurie, very much. And I want to just present, just say my gratitude to these presenters. I was so fortunate to connect with Community Futures, British Columbia, Jennifer Wetmore, way back in the day, and she just laid out the incredible network of microenterprise development organizations that are serving businesses every day. And then I was able to connect with Leanne Hackman-Carty, who's with the Economic Developers of Alberta. She opened the doors to all these other incredible partners, including workforce development, and connected me with Matt, which was pretty exciting. And then I connected with, I worked with Jessica Barter-Collick, who connected the dots for me with these other partners. Now, these presenters they are all from Alberta, but they just represent, these parts of the ecosystem. We could have specialists here for small scale manufacturing or construction or agriculture. But these are excellent partners who have stories to share, and I think will really outline opportunities for all of you and the innovation that's actually happening in microenterprise development. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Matt Hill, who actually knows everybody and connected me with all of these other partners. So go for it, Matt.
Perfect. Thank you, Lisa. And I do actually know quite a few people in here, I feel like, as well. So that's good. And people have heard this introduction that I'm about to do very recently as well, if they are, if they're from Alberta. But it's great to see everyone from other places as well. So Business Link Alberta and also the entrepreneur support ecosystem in Alberta more generally. That's kind of what we'll speak to here. Hopefully, as we go, we can make this as much a conversation, Lisa, because we're interested to know really and understand, well, what's happening in Washington State that's so different from here and what we can learn from that point of view. So I think it'll be awesome if that becomes a conversation. So Business Link Alberta, we're a non-profit formed 30 years ago, supported by the government of Alberta and the government of Canada through Prairies Economic Development, Prairies Can Economic Development, to provide support to people starting and growing small businesses. For some people, that's very, very early stage. About 2/3 of our clients are at that idea or even that pre-revenue stage, and we're helping them with their business planning, and we're helping direct them to resources at that very, very start and early stage. But that's it. Our vision really is that Alberta is the easiest, the best place to start a small business in Canada. We're connectors, first and foremost. So we work closely with partner organizations, and I see people from Community Futures here. That's important rural economic development agencies that are in place throughout this province and throughout BC as well. We also work with partners at Alberta Women Entrepreneurs, who aren't here today, but they support women entrepreneurs in the province, and they provide microfinancing, small loans, training, support to that group. And there are also Indigenous support organizations and Indigenous financing institutions like AIIC and Peter Gosan, who support Métis entrepreneurs as well. So a broad range of organizations supporting those small businesses. We really do the work through three ways. One is one-to-one business guidance and advice. So we have a team of 25, 30 team members located throughout the province that sit down with entrepreneurs and help them with the problem they're facing at that particular moment. We provide resources through our website and through webinars and through events. So that's the kind of the second way that we deliver that. And then finally, we provide networking opportunities as well. So we have programs that are deliberately geared to getting entrepreneurs together in mentor relationships and in also peer support relationships so that they can support each other as well. But really we see ourselves as providing that one-to-one support and then convening connection. Okay. We have a range of business planning resources, an interactive business plan builder. Like I say, we can work one-to-one, and then we'll work with partners at guiding them to their resources. So Futurpreneur, for instance, have great, more kind of financial focused tools and resources and help. So I'll leave Mo to speak to that though. Excellent. We have a business launch program. So that is for those people who they maybe had an idea last week. They don't know where to go. They feel like they are too early to go and have a conversation with a financial institution, but they need help just working through the mechanics of that business idea. So our business launch program will help them with that. They'll point them in the right direction, support them with market research, and then they'll work out some of those very basic financial fundamentals with them to think, okay, is this possible? What could a realistic timeline be for that? Then we have more specialist program, our digital marketing program. So this came out of kind of post-COVID funding originally, and some partners in here worked with us on projects here. So it started as the digital economy program, and it was really recognizing that small businesses needed support in this area of digital adoption. I mean, we remember straight away post-COVID, it was getting some of these businesses online so they could sell to survive. We saw that. This program really is in line with much of what we do, one-to-one, working with a business owner, of helping them identify, okay, what's the plan here? What steps are you going to take to improve your digital adoption? And then we have a market research service. We've been offering this for the whole time Business Link has been in existence. And it's really recognizing that lots of market research is unrealistically unaffordable for the very smallest businesses. So for a long time, we were funded by Prairie's Can through the government of Alberta to get those small business access to that market research database there. And finally, before I move on, community networking, webinars, that's really a kind of core piece of what we do as well. So we run regular events in Edmonton, Calgary. We did something in Medicine Hat in Olds recently, but really it's getting small business owners in a room with service providers, connecting them so that they are aware and comfortable, and there's really no wrong door for them to go through for that support. That's really what we're aiming to in Alberta. Recently, we held a round table of entrepreneur support organizations in Airdrie, and that really was the resounding message from these organizations. We know the support's there. We were talking about it today, and we're happy to share and we're happy to connect. And there really is no wrong door for that entrepreneur to walk through, and that's the aim for us. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Matt. And Matt, I just want to also clarify that Community Futures operates in every rural community, but your business link actually works in all of the communities, urban and rural. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So there's 27 Community Futures offices throughout the province in every single community outside of Edmonton and Calgary. And Business Link covers the entire province as well. There's also Community Futures Treaty 7, which I didn't mention, which are an Indigenous focused organization serving the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for that. And I also just want to say that you have a counterpart in BC, but they're not there.
No, they're not. Well, we got it. That's kind of an interesting to me story. We did have a counterpart in BC, but about 18 months ago, from then they no longer existed. They went bankrupt actually. A small business support organization, and they wound it up.
Well, here's the situation in our state. We've had 14 also close in our state of the 170 partners that we work with. This is not an easy time. This is not an easy time to be an entrepreneur support organization or an ESO. And what we know is that without government support and philanthropy and business, these organizations will not thrive and therefore will have an impact on these microenterprises. So yeah,
Yeah, and on that, that is something, and I think perhaps we can get to later. That's I think in some ways a different climate here of that philanthropy being a piece of this.
that's
Like as
right.
far as I am aware, Community Futures, I would be surprised if you're receiving much in terms of philanthropic donations. I know Business Link isn't. So like our sole source of funding is through for us. It's government funding.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for that. And thank you, Matt, just for all that you did to help map out or connect the dots for me. We had a speaker this morning in the plenary from the New North America Initiative. And I just want to do a shout out. I'm super inspired by your work and what you are bringing to the table. And I have worked with small businesses, young adults who have changed organizations who do this work because we have to do the work better, differently for these young entrepreneurs. They are bright, they're technologically advanced, they are capable, they're scrappy, and they are our future leaders. And if we don't invest with them, we're not going to be as strong, is true. So it's in that context that I want to introduce Mo Al-Taqatqa. And I have just been so enjoying your work, and you work not only with young adult entrepreneurs, but many folks. So please help us know more about Futurpreneur.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for being here in the morning. I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview about Futurpreneur. We have a lot of initiatives, a lot of programming that supports young entrepreneurs, but we are a nonprofit. Is it working? Yeah, perfect. Okay. So we are a nonprofit organization supported by the federal government. What we do is support young entrepreneurs between 18 and 39. We provide resources and support, as well as financing and mentorship to help them either buy a business, start a business, or have something on the side. Our support doesn't only come from the federal government. We have support as well from the Alberta government. We have institutional partners that work with us on specific initiatives and programming where we support our entrepreneurs. I'm going to go through that a little bit in more details, but all of our programming, all of our initiatives come in a similar structure. That structure comes in 3 steps. The first one comes in form of resources and support. That's at the beginning where we meet that entrepreneur, we chat with them, we understand their challenges, we understand the gaps in their business. We usually do some sort of a initial review process. We go through their sales strategies, marketing, finances, risk assessment, all of those details, just to identify what kind of gaps do they have right now before we send them anywhere else. During that stage, when we identify these gaps, in some cases, I get entrepreneurs who had a lot of things done, but they did not work on the market research. At that time, I would say, go to Business Link. Business Link has programming. They can help you with your market research. They can give you a report to give you more details about your market to help you make better decisions. Or in other cases, where if they're a tech entrepreneur, we have so many different organizations to support tech entrepreneurs for their MVPs. We're looking at Edmonton Unlimited, Platform Calgary, Alberta Innovate, etc. All of those can support the entrepreneurs at that stage. For us, it's very important to identify what they're looking for and where they can go next. During that stage, let's say they went well. They have complete business plan. They have their projections. They're ready for financing. We don't want people to take financing just for the sake of financing. We want someone to take the financing when they're ready. They're ready to put that money somewhere. Now, we can provide them up to $75,000 in form of non-collateral finance. That comes from Futurpreneur and our co-lending partner, which is BDC. If you're not familiar with BDC, BDC is Business Development Bank of Canada. That's also funded directly from the federal government. The third stage comes in form of mentorship, which is, for me, is one of the most important pieces of that programming, because giving people just money and tell them, okay, go ahead, run with it, is just not enough, especially if it's a young entrepreneur, early stage business. This is their first business. It's very hard for them. This is something new. This is new market, something they're going to work with. We provide that mentorship piece, but that mentorship piece would not exist without our volunteer mentors. We have volunteer mentors that volunteer their time. They have experience building their own businesses, or they have experience on executive level with a lot of large corporations. They'll be able to support the entrepreneurs and give them the guidance they need. Usually, they give around 4 hours on a monthly basis for a 2 years period. Now, that's the structure for all of our programming. I'm just going to highlight a little bit of the programming that we have in the initiatives. We have initially core program that's available for everyone between 18 and 39. We have a program for Black entrepreneurs that's supported by RBC. That one is funded by them to support Black young entrepreneurs who are starting a new business. We have as well programming for Indigenous entrepreneurs, and all of those are national programming as well. We have an initiative that's supported by TD Bank that supports newcomers. One of the challenges that we noticed when newcomers move to Canada, they have experience. They had businesses in the past. They're really excited to start something in here, but they don't have the knowledge. They don't have the funding, and most importantly, they don't have the credit score. Moving to a new country, you do not have that credit score. How could you be able to apply to even a credit card in a lot of cases? And you can't. So for that initiative that we have, they can apply to our programming without having that credit score. It will be assessed, of course, on a base on like customer basis. Like we have to check what they're planning to do, their business, and all of that. But it's an opportunity for newcomers to start and have a new business in here. I was working with an entrepreneur a few years ago when I was in Calgary. So I'm coming from Calgary. I'm the regional director for Alberta recently. But before that, I was working directly with entrepreneurs in Calgary and serving them. And she moved from Mexico with her partner. They wanted to open a small cafe in here. They didn't know the market. They didn't understand what they need to do. When they reached out to me, and I'm like, okay, what have you done so far? Where did you look? Who did you speak with? How much money do you have? They did not have any of this. We had to work a little bit for a few months, go through what they're doing, what are they planning, their story, how are they going to present themselves in the community. And that's something that was very important before we even moved them to that second stage with the financing. That was something very important. And right now they've been running in the business for the last 2 years. They're serving amazing coffee. They roast the coffee in Calgary. So they bring it in here from Mexico, and they roast it and they provide it for the community. And other than that, they hired people from the community. This is something that I always look at from the small enterprises, small businesses. They hire from the community. They're not similar to the larger corporations. They don't have these kind of resources to start hiring from everywhere else. They hire from their region, from their neighborhood. Like the barista that works there, she lives in the building next door. And I'm like, I love this. Like, this is a support for that community. But I think that would be enough. I don't want to talk a little bit more. Yes, yes. And then we'll go through the questions later. Thank you.
Mo, thank you. That's exactly what I was hoping you to share. And I also know that there are a lot of young entrepreneurs who've been in business for 7 and 10 years. Just because they're young doesn't mean they don't have the capacity or the experience owning a seasoned business. So thank you for that. I'd like to move now to Janice Baskin. I am just really inspired by your work. We have been fortunate to fund WTIA in Washington, Tech Alliance and Clean Tech Alliance, Venture Black, which is working with Black entrepreneurs, and technology. Tech entrepreneurs are critical to our economy and our growing economy. And unless we can find ways of supporting them, it's just not going to work as well. And that's why what you do is so important. So please welcome Janice Baskin.
Thank you. So my name is Janice, and I'm the manager for what's called the Edmonton Regional Innovation Network. And there's some really important pieces about that that make us a little bit different than what my colleagues up here are doing. And so number one, we are a program of Alberta Innovates. There are 8 regional innovation networks across the province, and we all work pan-provincially to make sure that there are supports available for early stage technology and innovation-based companies. And so when I say early stage, I mean, we measure these in what's called technology readiness levels, or TRL. I mean, TRL less than 1, meaning I think I have this idea. I don't know if this is a thing. To, okay, I've now managed to develop this idea into a proof of concept and register my business. So we're talking about the majority of the people that we work with are they're not even micro enterprises yet. They many times don't even have a registered business. And so the purpose of what the RINs do is to ensure that we help those people get to the place where they could then be eligible for funding, or to get their business registered, or maybe to hire their first employee. The really interesting thing about the regional innovation networks is that we are non-entities. We are not registered organizations. We are not not-for-profits. We are not even associations. We don't have bank accounts. We don't have any of these sort of pieces that come with having a registered organization. And why that's important is because this allows us to truly bring the community stakeholders together and represent their feelings and their needs when it comes to what tech and innovation entrepreneurs need. So we're not going to run a program that competes with something that BusinessLink does or something that Futurpreneur does. We're going to send people to those programs if they meet the qualifications and they're looking to build some of those skills out. So the market research, for example, is something that I send people to all the time, because in a technology company, you always have to have you have to know who your competitors are and what they're doing. We don't compete for funding. So our funding is secure for 3 years at a time as we apply for it. So I am now secure in funding for the next 3 years. I'm not going to go and compete with organizations like Edmonton Unlimited or like Platform Calgary, who are maybe going to some of our federal funders and getting funding, leveraging dollars to be able to bolster their programs. We're not going to do that either. We are there to support those types of programs. And so it makes us very unique across the province, because we don't have a mandate to bring in clients. We don't have a prescriptive way that we work with people. The RINs are literally a community-based response to how do we ensure that everyone is working collaboratively for the betterness of those small innovation and tech companies. And so I'm really privileged to do the work I do, because I literally get to build community. That is my job. So when you think about, you use the analogy of the forest. In the tech community, we use the rainforest, which is actually, there's an entire book, if you want to read it, that was written by some gentlemen in Silicon Valley about the rainforest and how to build a tech ecosystem around this principle of a rainforest. And so we think about, the big trees, the big folks, the Metas, the Googles, all of those type of things, but they really do, it's the seeds underneath, which is where we're working to help grow some of those pieces of the ecosystem so that it's self-sustaining. So also, I will just mention that when I talk about tech and innovation, yes, I'm talking about artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, deep technology, SaaS platforms, those type of things. But also, that's sort of where our brains tend to go when we think about technology development. We also have medical technologies. We have a very robust life sciences ecosystem here in Edmonton and across our province. We have agriculture technology. We have defense. We have many things happening that are sort of outside of that realm of what you might think of in terms of technology. And so one of the programs that we fund, which it's our most popular program. It runs out of Edmonton Unlimited. It's called the Experts on Demand program. So if you think of a early stage, let's take someone who's a nurse, and this is a true story, a woman who's a nurse, and she's been working in hospitals for years and years and years, and she recognizes that there's one little device that she could build that might help save lives, and it might make things happening in those rooms a bit more efficient. And so the regulatory pathway to develop a medical device that is approved by Health Canada, it's decades sometimes. And it is fraught with red tape and bureaucracy and clinical trials and all types of things. And if you're a nurse and you don't have that in your realm of knowledge, how are you going to know how to navigate that system? So through the Experts on Demand program, this woman was able to hire a fractional consultant who specializes in medical technology to help advance her along that pathway through the regulatory compliance. And so it's a program where people can apply for up to $10,000 for 100 hours of a fractional expert's time to come and actually work in their company for that time to help develop out the next stage of their business or the next stage of their technology. So I pulled some numbers really quickly on, our funded programs last year. We had 2,400 participants go through our programs. 700 of those were unique clients, which is really interesting. And again, I'm talking about early stage. So $13 million in investments secured through our funding programs. That's both dilutive and non-dilutive. And about 55 jobs created. So that's where we're starting to see these little pockets of things happening where the connections that we make and the way the ecosystem comes together supports those small stage companies, or I would say pre-microenterprise into becoming microenterprise companies. So that is kind of in a nutshell what we do, but I'm sure we'll get a little bit more into just kind of how the collaboration and network works.
That's beautiful. Thank you very much, Janice. And you also mentioned that there is a counterpart in BC.
Yes, I actually just became aware of them this morning. They're called the British Columbia Acceleration Network, and they are a subsidiary of the Innovate BC.
So if you're not from Alberta or BC or Washington, there are partners who will help your young entrepreneurs, your tech entrepreneurs. I'm assuming also you work with life sciences?
Yes.
Yes, okay. We are so fortunate at the Washington State Microenterprise Association to work with nonprofits in every sector, from manufacturing to construction. Creative economy is one of our largest and fastest growing industries in Washington State. In fact, Washington was one of the 21 communities in the world in creative economy work, and presented actually in Spain a couple of years ago. I was fortunate to go with them on that delegation. So we're talking about every sector has an entity that can support them. And your job, all of you, is to reach out to one of these partners or to us, or to do a search with Community Futures in order to find that right size, right connection with these entrepreneurs. So I'd like to move into some questions now, and just, one of the challenges that we have been facing just recently is a flooding. We had a flood that came in Washington. It impacted 13 counties. I don't know if you know this, but in Washington State, nationally, when there's a disaster, fire, flooding, 1/4 of the small businesses close. They close and they don't come back. And so when you think about the challenges facing businesses, it's huge, whether it's trying to access financing or the technical support to navigate regulatory structures, or even just survive a flood. They are facing challenges. And so I'm just curious, and you can do a quick one answer. You don't all have to answer, but I'd love to just hear, what are the most significant challenges facing businesses that you serve right now? And Matt, you could start if you want, and then we'll go again to Mo, and then maybe to Laurie.
Yeah, I mentioned briefly before about our programs around digital economy support and digital adoption. I don't think that's solved. Like, I think there are many small businesses who are still kind of struggling with the basics of digital adoption. And obviously, as the kind of more advanced businesses and organizations are talking about AI adoption, I think there are some who would benefit really from, more automation in their business, more organized IT processes, and I do think that is a challenge that there was, I speak very personally from programs I ran lots and lots of support for 5 years ago, and I don't see that support now. I think there's a risk of thinking, okay, that one's done. Let's move on to the next. The types of businesses that BusinessLink is working with, they're very small, starting out. The challenges around border and tariff, we know are there, and they know are there, but it's more in the background. It's in the background of the way it is in our own personal finances, like gas prices are up or grocery prices are up. But I don't think it's something that many of the smallest businesses that we're dealing with, some are, but many of them are not. We're talking about the neighborhood coffee shop, the pet grooming place. It's kind of further in the background to them. So I think they're very everyday things around like, do I have a website that works? Am I effectively able to promote my business? That's still a struggle for some people. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. How about you, Mo?
I actually agree a lot with this, especially with entrepreneurs that we speak with. They might have that kind of tech challenges with their business. But other than that, I would also point out the uncertainties that we see right now. Some of the entrepreneurs come to me, it's like, I want to start a product business, but I want to target specific markets. But because of the uncertainties that with what's happening, they are very hesitant to access any of those markets. You could start with a specific product that you want to sell to the US and then see that there's another tariff or something else that new that came up. If that happens, their profit margin will be non-existent, or they have to change the price of the product, then that will change the way they run things. That uncertainty, I think, is one of the challenges that the entrepreneurs talked about. But let's look at it from a different perspective. Some of the entrepreneurs came to us and they were saying, I want to focus on the Canadian market more. I want to work with the Canadian market more. I want to work with different provinces instead of going to a secondary market, and make the Canadian market my main market. And that's where we start discussing, okay, how can you do that? What are you going to target? Who are you going to work with, etc. I think even those uncertainties will help people make different decisions, but could also be beneficial to the local market.
Yeah, I mean, I think for many in our community, it's the additive nature of all of these sort of components. You have the inflation and you have other challenges, and then the unpredictability of those things. And then when you add on the unpredictability of the border, which is really something that started 6 years ago, right? You had this unprecedented closure of the Canada-US border. And on the US side, many of those small businesses were able to get support from the federal government or the state government. And that sort of buffered them and allowed them to keep that business model with the hope that things would go back to normal. And then just as it felt like things were starting to get back to normal, sort of the rug got pulled out again, but without that support. And in the state of Washington, we have a budget crisis essentially. And so there is not support coming, I mean, as it used to in the past, at least. So, we're at a conference here that's all about cross-border cooperation and collaboration, but that border uncertainty is getting worse instead of getting better. And I think, for us in the room, means we're going to work harder to overcome it. But for these small businesses, I think at least what I see is many of them are pivoting away from that reliance on the border because the uncertainty just seems to be building more and more.
Super helpful. And you had shared, Janice, about an example of an impact of these current conditions, political conditions, on a group of tech folks that would normally go to the US. Or any other topic you want to share.
Yes, yeah. So in the tech industry, it has been a bit of two sides of the coin as well, where so we have an accelerator here in Alberta called, actually it's a nationwide accelerator called the CSW Wellness Accelerator. And they every year would take a cohort of people down to Silicon Valley. And these are early stage tech entrepreneurs who are developing things for community wellness, and they would have the benefit of attending, seminars and workshops and working with VCs in Silicon Valley. And I guess it was last April that was canceled. So those delegates did not get to go and have that experience. I mean, I think they did the best they could to provide them with some of that expertise here. But I mean, obviously that is there is in the technology industry this very important pathway between our two countries, just in terms, especially in terms of dilutive investing. The flip side of that being that, for people who have hardware companies here, so there's a company here in Edmonton called Grengen, and she's developing batteries. And when I say batteries, I don't mean the things in this microphone. I mean like giant house-sized batteries that can live in the Arctic and withstand all the weather conditions up there. And because of the focus on the local supply chain that the Canadian government has, she's been all of a sudden sort of skyrocketed, especially because of the defense of the Arctic Circle and all of those sort of geopolitical things that are going on. So we're seeing, again, two sides of that coin where there's pros and cons to that border uncertainty.
Beautiful. And I guess, the question of no wrong door is really pivotal here. I have talked to many folks in Canada who have no idea about community futures. They're not in economic development. I know you all do, but they don't understand. They don't know what opportunities there are. And my question is, how do people, how can they best learn about all of you? What is the non-traditional approaches that entrepreneurs can use in order to find the right-sized support that you all provide? How do they know about you if they don't know? Go for it, Matt.
I mean, we make obviously attending things like this and going and doing outreach in communities. Like we're attempting to kind of engage people who are going to be connecting with small business owners. I do put a kind of question mark on this one sometimes because people often say, "Oh, I've never had a business link. No one's ever has." But we're serving, we serve 5,000 or 6,000 businesses a year, and if you are thinking of starting a business in Alberta and do a pretty rudimentary Google search, you're going to find us pretty quick, and if you go and kind of connect and need that help, you're going to find us. It's interesting. We obviously can see website traffic. Like we're seeing a lot from Claude and from ChatGPT that delivers them to Business Link Alberta, and I'm not saying that's forever. I'm like, oh, well, we're all good. I do definitely think it's going to change some of what we do, but I think people who need the support will find us. I don't mean we're going to be passive on that. I think it's important that we're engaged and we're part of a community as well. But yeah, we do try and go to places where we have in the past, we'll go to trade schools, we'll go to community centers. I'm speaking this weekend at the Eritrean Community Center in Calgary. So it's we do definitely try and get out there.
Wonderful. And then I guess for you, Mo, when you, we know we have partners who go to beauty schools and other kinds of trade communities. How is it true that entrepreneurs find these supports through their own networks, word of mouth? Do you find that as one critical way, or how do you think about this?
So, but I want to point something out. If you're working with a nonprofit, you do not have the budget to advertise. You don't have the money to do any of that. And this is why we always focus on the community support. What do I mean by that? One of the we wanted to reach out to more tradespeople. We want to reach out to their businesses. They want to start their own business. They are leaving some of the companies that they're working with. We want to support them. And what we did, we partnered with Rona. Rona is a chain here, and they have a lot of different stores across the country. They sell paint, they sell so many different things, but also they have programming for tradespeople. And what we did, we started creating small workshops, 2 to 3 hours, for support. We give a little bit about business planning, a little bit about the Rona support that has, and we've seen that make us reach the community better. Why? Because we're partnering together. Our audience, their audience, our connections, their connections. We try to do something together, and that's where I see it. I think we have to keep partnering with different organizations. Even I remember I was chatting internally with our team, and we were talking about the Rona partnership. And one of the team members was like, Rona with Futurpreneur, like how can you, how is that happening? It's like, you know, Costco working with BDC. It's just it's not there. But I think there's always a way to collaborate together.
Wonderful. Did you want to share, Janice, and about how that nurse, for example, I mean, how do people find you or find the sources of support that you provide?
Yeah, you know, what's really interesting is that sometimes people will go through programs that we fund and not have any idea who we are. And that's okay. Because again, like I said, we're not an organization that lives and dies on sort of these numbers of clients. But the typical pathway actually for us is that people will go to Alberta Innovates. So they will be looking for funding because there is quite strong funding for technology companies in Alberta. They'll go to Alberta Innovates and they'll say, I want funding for this product that I'm developing. And Alberta Innovates will say, you are too early. You haven't done any market research. You don't have a registered business. Right? And so they will send them out to the RINs depending on where they are geographically. But then I also, like, from time to time, will get referrals from Futurpreneur, from Business Link, from Edmonton Unlimited, some of the other support organizations where they're sort of like, okay, this program isn't working for this person, or maybe it's not a good fit for them. You know, what else exists out there? And so then we have to get a little bit creative, but there are also, luckily, a lot of folks who have developed tech and artificial intelligence platforms that will help support entrepreneurs in developing out their businesses. So one example is called Quan. They're a local startup, KWAN. And they actually were born out of a mentorship program that existed at the University of Alberta called Innovation Masterminds YAG. And when that program sort of sunsetted, the founders of the program went, well, why don't we take these decades of mentorship that we have and knowledge that we have and put it into an artificial intelligence platform. And then for people who don't want to go sit in the classroom or don't, want to work on a webinar, they want to learn in an asynchronous style, maybe this is something that could work for them.
I love it. Thank you for that. I wanted to ask on this tech question. I heard the speaker in the tourism session yesterday with WTIA. I can't pronounce her name, but extraordinary speaker yesterday. She's a serial entrepreneur. She's also an investor. She's a professor. She's incredible. And she talked about AI and all of the advancements in technology and the regulatory opportunities there are to make sure that we stay safe. And I'm wondering, how are these small micro businesses going to be able to tap into that? We know there's a organization that these entrepreneurs with low incomes are using tech faster than these more aged entrepreneurs because it really is an equalizer when it comes to being able to grow their business. Do you find barriers to entrepreneurs using tech to get further along? Any of you? You don't all have to answer, but it's up to you.
So I'll say that one of the major issues that technology companies in Alberta, for sure, and probably Canada experience is a low rate of early adoption. So we're very risk averse in Canada. Our small businesses are especially risk averse to technology adoption. Our construction companies in Alberta and they are self-admitted. They will sit on a panel like this and say, we're terrible at tech adoption. So there is certainly a huge barrier in terms of that, because in order to validate a technology, you need early stage users to help you do that. The flip side of that is that I find that small businesses are eager to learn about the technologies, but they're also oversaturated with artificial intelligence. Like, is anyone else tired hearing about artificial intelligence every day on the news and everywhere you go? And for me, every day I meet with 3 people who have developed a new AI platform, and it's like, I think that there is a real need, and maybe this is something that our entrepreneur support organizations can look towards doing, is how to educate small businesses on the risk and the ethical use of artificial intelligence, and ensuring that if they are going to, say, take on a beta test with a local technology company, how do they know that their data is safe? How do they know, not even that, how do they know which questions to ask and the answers that they're supposed to hear to understand that what they potentially will adopt will be safe for people, because their clients are going to want to know those answers as well.
Beautiful. You want to go for it?
Yeah. So I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs who come by, similar to what you just mentioned, that they already create a new platform or a new mousetrap. Easier to vibe code an app and just try to launch it into the market. But the one common thing between them was none of them spoke to one customer even. And um, you spend weeks on an app, or in some cases, just days. It really depends. And you did not speak with someone who actually interested in using it. And that's where I'm seeing the challenges. It's not about just using those apps or creating something new. A lot of people are creating them, but they can't find someone to pay for them.
Go for it.
And mine is, yeah, thinking about it from the very small businesses, the existing businesses, and how they adopt AI. And I think that some, unfortunately, are a full step away from that. I think lots of their, and again, I'm talking about the sub 5 people businesses, lots of their data is just not in a place where AI can effectively do anything with it. You know, like I got my kid's bike serviced at a neighborhood bike shop recently, this week, and it's a paper written bill. His service record, it's all paper written. So like there's really nothing that he's a whole step away from having that, you know, even like online bookkeeping systems, having that data in that place. Many business owners still aren't there. They are the shoebox with the receipts. So unless we kind of, it's a multi-stage movement, isn't it? Like until they have that kind of good high quality data, what they can do with AI beyond like tidy up this email for me is somewhat limited, I think.
But it sounds like you all are in some way helping them navigate that path in some way.
Yeah, sure. And we do like regular webinars on, you know, using AI to support you in writing your business plan and that type of content. So, you know, getting people open to the idea of this is a good tool for you to use, not to replace your critical thinking.
Thank you for that. I'd like to shift a little bit to the rural urban. Some people call it a divide. I don't think it's a divide, it's a connection. And I know that you have, this Pinwar region is vast. I have been gobsmacked by how much is going on in this region and how much collaboration has been going on. And so I'm curious about how you all help entrepreneurs who may be in rural communities that aren't really right on your doorstep, and how you help them go to the next step, whether they're in rural or in urban communities. And you want to go start, Janice?
So for us, it's really interesting. So I guess I should say, so 6 of the regional innovation networks across the province are rurally located, and they are all partnered with a community futures office as their fiscal agent and program partner. So there are ways that they are serving, and they do that very differently than we do in the urban centers. A lot of our work in Edmonton and Calgary is around ecosystem navigation and funding those programs that help to support them. In rural communities, a lot of those programs literally do not exist. And so it's so we meet as RIN partners twice a month, and a lot of that work is talking about how do we democratize the access to the information for rural entrepreneurs. So one of the big things is investment, right? Whether it's through lending or venture capital, there are investable companies in the rural areas, but a lot of them don't have the visibility that some of, or they don't have the ability, like we think about, you know, we hold conferences and we go, okay, well, we'll just invite them into this conference in the city and they'll get all this visibility. When we don't stop to think about, for them to come into the city, they have to leave their business for 3 to 4 days. They may have to find childcare for those 3 to 4 days. So not only are they missing out on potential revenue or time in their business, but then they're also spending money to get childcare. They're spending money to drive to the city, to stay in the city, to spend $700 to $1,000 for that conference ticket or that booth at that conference, right? And so a lot of them go, it is not worth it. And so I'm really passionate about how do we create systems where we get visibility for these rural entrepreneurs without placing, you know, a huge burden on them, really. I don't have an answer for that yet, but that's something that I would really love to see a solution to.
Me too. Did you want to share something, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, we would like to have people in every community in the province, and it's just a resource limitation. Like we serve the clients that we serve are divided in the way the province is divided. Third Calgary, roughly third Edmonton, third outside of those centers. But we know that entrepreneurs in rural communities, they want someone in that community. They don't want to be served virtually by someone in Calgary. Like I used to live in southern Alberta in Brooks, and they don't see themselves as Medicine Hat, which is only 100 kilometers away. Like they don't see themselves as that. They see themselves as being of this place. Like the idea for them of getting some support from there. So it absolutely, like that's a challenge. I mean, we work with partners and other organizations, but it's definitely an limitation.
Well, it's definitely a strength that Canada thinks strongly enough that every rural province or rural community has a community futures. I'm so blown away by that. I mean, we have SBDCs. They're incredible partners in Washington State, but they have to really drive to get partner funding in order to function. They don't lend. They're exceptional technical assistance providers, but the Community Futures lens is beautiful, and I'm very impressed with that. I wanted to share a quick story about these organizations that are masters. And so one is Jen Maynard, who's with the Northwest Native Chamber. She's in Portland, but they serve Oregon and Washington. And they work with all our Native CDFIs, our community development financial institutions. She is a networker. She is in rural and urban communities. She is a leader. She's from the Yukon. I can't explain to you how wonderful it is to work with her. Another one of my good friends is Rocio Zielinski. She's with the Stalo Nation, and she's a Community Futures partner, but she also gets that rural and urban is important and investing in entrepreneurs is important. And then Robert Venables, who's here, he is in Alaska, and we were fortunate way back in the day to work with the Nature Conservancy and British Columbia, Alaska, and Washington on that emerald edge, that temperate rainforest, to protect that rainforest. And I was able to meet with the Spruce Root, which is also a CDFI, and they do lending, but they also send these partners in their team out to these very remote rural islands. I'm not going to say in the middle of nowhere because they're in the middle of their community, but my word. And they would go and invest in these communities, spend money there, invest in a local leader to drive innovation at that local level. And so Elena is like my Shiro in a way that is so powerful. And what you do up there, Robert, is incredible. But what I'm trying to say is that there are partners in all of your communities who are driving that kind of rural-urban connection. And it's very impressive. Okay, I'm cognizant of the time. I want to spend a little bit of time on cross-border collaboration. I know you're in Alberta. I know that you're in Alberta. And we're in Washington. However, I am curious about what's possible. What would you envision? What would you like to see? I mean, I've talked to our partners in BC who are incredible and want to have more cross-border collaboration, not just supporting businesses to do their work across border, but cross-border among our organizations to better do our work in ways that can sustain and support these businesses doing that work. So I'm just curious, anyone who wants to go ahead, you can go ahead, start, Matt.
Yeah, I've often thought about we're very inward looking. I don't know whether it's just as an organization but like, yeah, I'm aware of the partners here, but we don't regularly look at what's happening in the States or what's happening further afield. Obviously, I'm from the UK originally. Like, there's a whole way of supporting entrepreneurs there that they don't hear. That's absolutely things I'm sure we could learn from there as well. So I think, yes, some opportunity to continue conversations, just learning like what are the programs there, what can we learn from here, perhaps bringing in at the right time funders, government partners to look at, well, how do we perhaps bring some of that best practice to here.
Either of you want to speak to that? What would be the cat's meow?
I don't have something that I would suggest, that we could do, but I could share a challenge. I was working with one of our entrepreneurs. They're from Alberta here. They've been here for a very long time, and they're working with beef tallow. So it's very hard to use it for anything other than cooking or the usual routes. But they figured out a way to create creams. They create specific things that can help people because they really came up with it because their daughter had eczema, and the only thing that was helping her is products that are made from beef tallow. So they were working on that to create it. And then they saw that the US market is great with beef tallow. And that's where they started having a goal to work in there. They had some challenges. They really wanted to access that market. They couldn't as much as the way they have the resources in here in Canada. So for me, this is a challenge. I want to know, how can I support these entrepreneurs? These are small businesses. I remember when they started the business at the beginning and we were having our meetings, they were with me in that call and their daughter was in the call with them. She was jumping, chatting, and it's just beautiful to see that small family business coming out and they want to reach cross-border. How can we help them?
So I'll add, and this is probably not so much for the business owners because we talk about how stressed they are, but for organizations like yours, in Oregon, BC, and Washington, we have an initiative called the Cascadia Innovation Corridor, maybe somewhat ironically spearheaded by Microsoft, but Microsoft has offices in Seattle and Vancouver. And originally, they had a lot of challenges getting their workforce back across the border. And so they've been very involved in the cross-border space. And this has evolved into an initiative it's about a lot of different things, but it's supported by the premier and the governors of Washington State and Oregon. And one of the things this initiative focuses on is not just the tech industry, but what can we learn from each other in terms of affordable housing, in terms of best practices in a variety of different ways. And so what they've been doing is supporting delegations from the different tech sectors and the chambers of commerce and the board of trade in Vancouver and kind of the business community, so that I think just recently, I want to say it was the BC delegation went to Oregon, but I might have it the opposite way, and met with the chambers there about like, well, what is your jurisdiction doing about this challenge? And a lot of it is now turning into AI. How are you responsibly managing AI? But that's a pretty neat way to just say, we're not going to do things the same, but we can learn a lot about the way you do it over there, and that might inform the way we do it over here. So I think there's opportunities to develop those kinds of, relationships. I mean, that's part of why we're all here. But a lot can be gained from just that knowledge transfer. It's a little bit like what you were talking about with the Silicon Valley stuff, right?
Yeah, go for it.
Dreamer, and I'm a rose-colored glasses type of person, but I think that for me, and this is not an Edmonton Regional Innovation Network perspective, this is a Janice Baskin's perspective. I also own a company. We've had 3 employees for 30 years. We're very successful at what we do. We're not winning any awards or showing up on anyone's radar in terms of revenue generated and jobs created. But, and I don't know if you said this at the beginning, but 80% of all businesses in Alberta are small businesses. Yeah. They have less than 5 employees. And so tech, we are in the tech industry, we are very guilty of looking for the unicorn. We want the job or the DriveWise. Those are 2 local tech companies that have, gone international, that have had successful, millions of dollars exits. We're looking to develop those. But my personal soapbox is that our economy is driven by small business. And if we don't support small business, there will be no more Microsoft's, Jobbers, whatever those companies are, or even, Stantec or Ellis Dawn, or those large traditional type companies. And I really feel like I feel like I get really passionate about how do we uplift these stories of these small companies that are doing important work, and they may never have any aspirations to be anything other than 5 employees. And that's okay. We don't celebrate those stories enough. And I think, again, I don't know what the solution is to that, but I think, everything from a government focus on nurturing those small businesses to conferences that elevate the fact that this is where our economy is built, especially in Western Canada. I think that if we continually sort of not ignore, but just sort of like downplay the importance of those small companies, we're not going to see this thriving ecosystem that we would really love to see. So in my perfect world, we all have this kind of support, and it flows cross border so that small companies are supported in doing the work that they want to do at the rate that they want to do it, without an expectation of blowing up to a $1 billion company. If they want that, great. But if they don't, that's okay too.
I love that. Yeah, I just can't say enough how important it is to elevate the lives of these entrepreneurs. I can say over 600,000 under 5 employee companies in Washington are doing their work, and they're making money. They're connecting with workforce development. They're connecting with financing partners, but it is an uphill walk. If you haven't made payroll, you just don't know how hard it is. If you haven't been able to hire somebody who's skilled to do the work, it's hard. But there are Uber drivers and creative economy entrepreneurs who are trying to do this, who learn at the end of the year that they actually owe $6,000 because they didn't realize that they're a small business owner, they're a contractor. And when we don't demystify the challenges, the regulatory environment, the tax policies, we are not helping these entrepreneurs. And I'll just say, on this cross-border collaboration, this event we were at last fall, I really didn't have the ferry between Anacortes and Sydney on my radar. It just wasn't there. But I learned that our state's investment of $3 million actually generated $12 million in revenue for both sides, for the Gulf Islands and the San Juan Islands, and all the small businesses and tourism and traffic. And so that is a cross-border opportunity that is going to be hard to lift, is going to be hard to fund, is going to be hard to elevate. But my word, what's possible when we can do that? And I don't know if you wanted to share it or know it or have any insights on that.
Go ahead. I don't know. I mean, it was just a cross-border transportation route that shut down during COVID and has not started since. So it's another example of kind of the longer term impacts of some of these short kind of, I think of them as border shocks. And it's questionable if it's ever going to come back. But if it does, it's going to take a lot of pressure from the communities. Yeah.
If it does come back, it will be a game changer for these small businesses. All right, so we are close to our time. I want to just give everybody like 30 seconds to do your magic wand, what you are hoping to achieve in your work, and ways possibly that we can collaborate in the future. Go for it, Matt. Oh, come on.
No, but I think it's a great, this is a great starting point in a conversation, one that we genuinely have not had before, one that I'm not aware has been had between entrepreneur support organizations across the different regions, so across this region. So I think that is my kind of aim off the back of this, is work with Lisa perhaps in convening something, even if it's just virtually to begin with, of getting some organizations and partners in a room and learn for some knowledge sharing. So that's what I'll take from this.
I love it. Thank you. How about you, Mo?
Um, what I want to say is I want us to grow more partnerships with different organizations. I think this will be much more supportive to the community and the people who are looking for to build or start their business. I want to have much stronger relationships. I want us to create something together. All of us, we're complementing each other with our services. We are. We're not competing, not in any way. And I think that will be highlighted more if we work together more.
Love it. Go for it, Janice.
Yeah, I think for me, if we could increase the rate of early beta testers for companies. And the other thing I will say is that maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, but I often tell companies, go where your customers are. And it doesn't matter if they're here in Alberta or if they are in Ontario or if they're in Europe or if they're, in Washington. And so if it is possible to create a new user base of customers for local tech companies, that's amazing, and vice versa. And I think, like, geopolitical things aside, there is an opportunity for sort of some grassroots movement around that kind of thing.
I'd say the cross-border environment is changing, our relationships are changing, and that's all the more reason why we should make sure we understand those changes for the people that we serve and how it matters to our stakeholders.
So what I learned is that we have some tech challenges to unravel for the entrepreneurs we serve. There's uncertainty, which makes it hard to be successful as a small business. The regulatory environment sometimes feels like they could be duplicative and contradictory, and small businesses need the help. Tourism is essential in the work we do with small businesses in every province and state. Cross-border collaboration is fun, it's imperative, and it will help the small businesses thrive. And if we can get financing into the hands of these entrepreneurs who are ready for financing, we will help them grow at a pace that's going to be at the speed of trust. And I, for one, am committed to learning every single business technical assistance partner in every province before next year's Pinoir. And I want to say one last thing, and that is, in our work, in 2010, I shifted to not just business as usual, but business which is aware of the circular economy. And I didn't mention it before because it wasn't really on our radar, but the work that Washington State is doing around industrial symbiosis, using waste as a resource and connecting the dots for manufacturers, is profound. And I've seen it happen in Canada, and that is an opportunity, I think, that is going to be profit generating for small businesses. And I'm eager to partner with you. Anyone who wants to talk about microenterprise development, I'm your human. Thank you. Let's give them all a round of applause.